The sound of shattering glass cut through
You
the
think you can just
elegance
ignore
of the
me?
Berlin Gala like a scream no one
Somebody
could
stop
ignore.
this right
In
now!
the split second that followed, before anyone understood what was happening, a man with a limp threw himself forward, his body moving faster than pain ever allowed, just as a gunshot echoed across the grand hall. The bullet that was meant for a powerful man struck him instead, and as he collapsed onto the polished marble floor, the entire world seemed to freeze around him. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unexpected heroes, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Kindness, because stories like this deserve to be remembered. Only an hour earlier, everything had looked perfect. The ballroom glowed under crystal chandeliers, the air filled with soft music and polite laughter, and the most influential people in the city gathered to celebrate success, power, and wealth. Among them stood Elara Voss, the youngest female CEO in the company's history, admired for her intelligence, but feared for her cold precision. She moved through the crowd with effortless confidence, her designer gown trailing behind her like a symbol of everything she had built and everything she refused to lose. To Elara, the evening was more than a gala. It was a statement. Her company was expanding globally, and her father, the chairman, was finally stepping back into the spotlight after months of absence. Investors watched her, competitors studied her, and she welcomed it all with a quiet, controlled smile. She had fought too hard to stand there to let anything or anyone shake her, and yet something did. Near the far end of the hall, by the service corridor, stood a man in a janitor's uniform. He moved slowly, dragging one leg slightly behind the other, his posture uneven but determined. His name was Adrian Keller, though no one there cared to know it. To the guests, he was invisible, just another worker maintaining the illusion of perfection. When Elara noticed him, it wasn't because of who he was, but because of how he walked. Her eyes lingered for a moment too long, and a faint, dismissive smirk crossed her face. Surrounded by executives who thrived on status, she made a quiet remark that earned a few subtle chuckles. It was the kind of careless cruelty that came easily when you forgot that every person had a story. Adrian heard it. Of course he did. People like him always heard everything, even when no one thought they mattered enough to notice. But he didn't react. He simply continued his work, quietly wiping down a spill near the edge of the room, his movements careful and practiced. Beneath the worn fabric of his uniform, scars told stories no one there could imagine. Years earlier, in a city far from glittering chandeliers, he had stood in places where survival depended on instinct, not status. The limp was not weakness. It was a reminder of what he had endured and what he had chosen to walk away from. For Adrian, this job wasn't just about cleaning floors. It was about staying invisible, about building a life that didn't demand explanations. Every step he took hurt, but he had learned to carry that pain quietly, the way he carried everything else. As the evening unfolded, Elara returned to her father's side. He looked older than the last time she had seen him on a stage like this, but his presence still commanded respect. Their relationship was complicated, built on expectations and unspoken disappointments, yet in that moment she felt a rare sense of pride standing beside him. She didn't notice Adrian watching from across the room, not watching her, but watching everything. Something didn't feel right. Years of instinct sharpened by danger had taught him to recognize shifts in energy, the subtle tension that crept into a space before chaos erupted. A man near the balcony seemed out of place, his movements too calculated, his gaze too fixed. Adrian's grip tightened on the cleaning cloth in his hand as unease settled deep in his chest. He tried to ignore it. He told himself he was imagining things, but his body refused to listen. The moment stretched, fragile and silent, and then it shattered. The glass doors burst open with a violent crash, and the sharp crack of a gunshot echoed through the hall. Panic erupted instantly. Guests screaming, ducking, scrambling for cover as security rushed forward in confusion. In the chaos, no one moved fast enough. No one except Adrian. He didn't think. He didn't hesitate. He saw the target, saw the trajectory, and knew exactly what was about to happen. Elara's father stood frozen, exposed, and in that fraction of a second, Adrian made a choice that would change everything. He ran. Pain shot through his leg, but he ignored it, pushing himself forward with everything he had left. Time seemed to slow as he lunged, his body colliding with the chairman just as the second shot rang out. The impact knocked them both to the ground. For a moment there was silence, then blood began to spread across Adrian's uniform. The world came rushing back all at once. Shouts, footsteps, sirens. But Elara heard none of it. She stared at the man she had mocked only minutes ago, now lying between her and death, his face pale but strangely calm. Her breath caught as the reality sank in. He had saved her father. He had taken a bullet meant for him, and he had done it without hesitation. Kneeling beside him, Elara felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Fear, not of losing power, but of losing something human. Adrian's eyes flickered open briefly, meeting hers for just a second, and in that silent exchange she saw no anger, no resentment, only a quiet acceptance that shook her to her core. It didn't make sense. Why would someone she had dismissed so easily risk everything for them? The question haunted her as paramedics rushed in, lifting Adrian onto a stretcher and carrying him away. The gala ended in chaos, the glamour replaced by flashing lights and unanswered questions. In the days that followed, the story spread across the city. Headlines focused on the attack, on the chairman's narrow escape, on the security failures. But beneath it all was a quieter story, one that began to gain attention. A janitor who had become a hero. Elara couldn't ignore it. She visited the hospital, something she rarely did for anyone outside her immediate circle. Walking through the sterile corridors, she felt out of place in a way she had never experienced before. This wasn't a boardroom she could control, or a deal she could negotiate. This was something real. When she finally saw Adrian, he looked smaller somehow, weakened but alive. The machines around him hummed softly, a stark contrast to the chaos of that night. For a long moment she simply stood there, unsure of what to say, because no words felt enough. She had spent her life measuring worth in achievements, in numbers, in influence, but nothing she had ever accomplished compared to what this man had done in a single selfless act. And she had mocked him. The weight of that truth settled heavily on her chest, forcing her to confront something she had avoided for years, the person she had become. As Adrian slowly recovered, pieces of his past came to light. He wasn't just a janitor. He was a former soldier who had walked away from violence after it had taken too much from him. The limp was a result of injuries sustained while protecting others, long before anyone in that gala knew his name. He had always been a protector, even when no one saw him, especially when no one cared. That realization changed something in Elara. Not overnight, not in some dramatic transformation, but in quiet, undeniable ways. She began to listen more, to notice the people she once overlooked. She made changes within her company, not for recognition, but because it felt necessary in a way she couldn't explain. And Adrian, he returned to work months later, though not in the same way. The company offered him a different role, one that honored his courage and respected his strength. But what mattered most to him wasn't the title. It was the dignity, the simple acknowledgement that he was more than invisible. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like, share, and comment, because stories like Adrian's remind us of the kind of world we can choose to create. Before this story ends, we have a small request for you. Comment below with one word, kindness, if you believe even the smallest act can change someone's life. The night of the gala would always be remembered for its violence, for the fear and chaos that shattered its illusion of perfection. But for Elara, it became something else entirely. It became the moment she saw the truth, that greatness isn't defined by power or wealth, but by the quiet courage to protect others without expecting anything in return. And sometimes, the person the world overlooks is the one who stands tallest when it matters most.